liars. They obviously need to conceal the truth, and all we have to do is spread that awareness, spread that truth.
Many people, such as Alex Jones and countless others, who will tell you 90% of the truth, and they'll tell you what's wrong with the world, and they'll point out a lot of things, but they will not tell you who's behind it. And that's the difference as far as why my channels get censored and theirs do not. Yes, they're telling you 90% of the truth, they're letting you know that things are wrong, but even Ray Charles could see that. In other words, a blind man could see that things are not right. What good does that do if they're not letting you know who's behind it? I mean, I don't believe for a moment that a person such as Alex Jones does not know who's truly behind these things. He's a self-proclaimed truth seeker. This is his job. And anyone that's truly looking for the answers will find the truth. And the truth is undeniable. So that would lead any reasonable person to conclude that he's a shill. He's deliberately taken an audience of people, the average person that's looking to figure out what the hell's going wrong here, and keeping them from seeing the full picture. They settle for what he tells them. They're looking for answers, so someone has to be there to provide answers. Better someone like him that's not going to point at those that are truly in charge than someone such as myself who's going to take them all the way. That is why he's allowed to continue going and I am not. It's definitely not because I'm hateful and he's a much more intelligent and calm, mild-mannered person. That's obvious to all that that's not the case. He screams and yells, and by all means, that's the way he wants to do things, and let him do it. And they let him do it. Remember, they own YouTube, they own the mainstream media, and they own the very radio stations in which he broadcasts his show from. He's an employee, and an obedient one at that. And notice how so many of you want to point out, hey, if you don't like the rules on YouTube, then go get your own YouTube, so on and so forth. Basically, furthering my point, that ownership of the mass media, to include the internet as well, is a dangerous thing. And these people will only allow those that they want to have a voice to have one. Anyone that doesn't, they will remove. And if they didn't like what he was saying, he would not have a show. His YouTube channel would have been removed long ago, and it would be as simple as that. He doesn't have anything special that he points out. There's nothing that he's saying that is revolutionary or beyond that in which we can all see for ourselves if we only chose to look. But if he wasn't delivering the message that they wanted him to deliver, then just like me, he would not have a YouTube channel anymore. And he definitely wouldn't have a radio show on their radio stations. That's obvious. But if he was really pointing out those that are truly in charge, I can assure you that he would not have a voice. He would not have a medium to get his message across. They simply would not allow it. Remember, they own these things. They can do whatever the hell they want to do with them. As so many of you have clearly pointed out when we complain about censorship on YouTube. The owners can always do as they please. Same thing stands and holds true here. But I don't preach hatred or violence at all. And anyone that even suggests such a thing is either making an uninformed conclusion about me, or they have a deliberate intention to make other people think that I preach hatred and violence as an excuse for them to censor me. Because the only alternative would be an admission that I'm pointing at the right people. And they simply cannot do that, so they do the only thing that they can in silence and censor me. And to further my point a bit more, if you take a look around, you don't have organizations that are there to blindly defend George W. Bush, right? He's supposedly the most powerful man in the world, but we can criticize him and make jokes about him all day and night. No one's going to say a thing about it. Same thing goes with the Illuminati or any of these other organizations that people want to point to as being behind this globalization, our rights being taken away from us, the economic crisis, and countless other problems. There is no organization that's there to say you can't talk about blacks, you can't talk about whites, you can't talk about Arabs, Chinese, or anyone else. But you do have organizations like the JIDF or agencies like the ADL that will tell you that you cannot criticize Jewish people. You cannot even point at the things that they do. You cannot even call them that in which they call themselves, Jews. If you say the word Jew, then you're an anti-Semitic, according to the State Department as well. You basically cannot call them into question or point out a single action that they take, or the U.S. government will label you falsely as an anti-Semite. The U.S. government doesn't do that with any other group of people. only Jewish people, only Israelis, none other. So that should also lead you to believe that they have absolute control over the government as well. Why else would the government itself, on the State Department's website, and in their paperwork, in their books, and soon to be written in law, with punishments attached to it, state that you cannot criticize the state of Israel, you cannot criticize Jewish people or suggest that they're behind the New World Order or anything of the sort. You basically cannot say their name, or the Department of State will label you as an anti-Semitic. And then soon after that, not too long from now, the laws will follow. These things are already in the books, people. You can see them for yourself. Why are they in the books? Why is this the only group that's being protected? Just like in any business or company, the one person that you cannot criticize is the boss. Just knowing that much should let you know to question these people. And if you do question them in their version of history when it comes to the Holocaust, they will throw you in prison. That's another thing. The only historical event in the modern world, in the civilized world, that you cannot question is the Holocaust. And if you do, even as an independent researcher just simply seeking the truth, they will throw you in prison in many European nations. Now, if that doesn't tell you that they have something to hide, and if that doesn't tell you that they have the power and the authority to make these things happen, to put them into action, to force these governments to imprison people that simply question them and their version of history, then nothing ever will. But that should at least start you questioning the people that are truly in charge. So calling them that in which they call themselves, will have you falsely labeled as an anti-Semitic for merely pointing out the things that they are so obviously doing. You know, these are questions that cannot be answered by these people, but I can answer these questions, and I've answered these questions by pointing out simple facts. Jewish people control the financial institutions. They print the money. They own the money. They have a complete monopoly on that. So with all that money comes great power. Do I need to convince people of this? And with complete control of the media, which they have, it's undeniable. Do I have to convince you of the power of that? And then I've pointed out countless times that the only nation, the only citizens that we will allow to have dual citizenship are Israelis. And these same Israeli citizens are the ones that are at the top levels of our government. They have infiltrated our government at the highest levels. They are the ones putting forth things such as the Patriot Act, these House resolutions, and things that strip every one of us of our rights. They are the ones deciding where our tax dollars go. They are the ones deciding how much we get taxed in the first place, virtually making slaves of us all. I've given names. I've shown the things that they've done, not just pointed at them and said, hey, it's Jewish people. I've given you names. I've listed them clearly for all to see. And that is why I get suspended, because I'm pointing at the people that are truly in charge, while Alex Jones and the like are just simply pointing in the middle of space, nowhere. You know, screaming and yelling and pissed off and angry, rightfully so, but then pulling up just shy of letting you know who's truly in charge, and actually going on and on and on about Bush. And then, I get tired of hearing about that, because Bush is nothing but a puppet. Obama is nothing but a puppet. Do you think Obama would be where he's at today? Do you think that you or I would even know who the hell Obama was if it wasn't for the Jewish media and the Jewish money being behind him? If either one of those was not behind him, which wouldn't be the case, because once their money's behind them, then the media is going to also get behind them, or vice versa. It's one and the same. Then it becomes clear and obvious. And again, can any of you sit here and say that Obama earned his way up over the years and he's there based on merit? Or why a person like Ron Paul, who's calling for the end of their Federal Reserve, who obviously had more popular support than any of them, doesn't even get a chance. He doesn't get any media coverage, very little to none, and it's not favorable in most instances. And all of his money came from people like you and I. But without the support of the Jewish media and the Jewish money, he had no chance. Now, I'm not saying this in a hateful manner. I have nothing to gain personally by pointing out the facts of who it really is. And as a matter of fact, I risk a lot. Not just my YouTube channel, that's trivial and that's meaningless compared to the real consequences that we all face. But truth comes above and beyond everything else. I don't care about popularity. If I wanted to be popular, I wouldn't even be talking about politics. Or if I was, I'd be pretending to be a Democrat or Republican and acting as though that matters. But no, I am here calmly and factually pointing out things that none of us can deny. Unless you want to live in denial, or unless you have an agenda and a reason for denying these things. But again, I don't care about the consequences of telling the truth. The truth is reason enough in and of itself to face any consequences that may be a result of telling that truth. And to any of you questioning why my channels get censored so deliberately, you need not look further than the one distinction between myself and these other truth seekers. Anyhow, it's quite simple as to why I get suspended. All of the things that you've heard on their website or their comments, that I'm being hateful, you can see for yourself that I'm being anything but hateful. I'm telling it like it is. I'm calling people that in which they call themselves. I'm putting things together and adding them up for you all, but ultimately I implore you to make your own decision. I'm just trying to fight the censorship so that you have the ability to make an informed decision.